I believe strongly in Marx's law. And Marx's law, basically, I've mentioned it before, think of it as technology is exponential. You and I are all logarithmic, and our organizations are logarithmic. The bigger the gap between technology and us, the bigger the disruption.
And then, again, we're not going to get political over here, but the core thesis of this whole administration is, by the way, that technology is moving at a breath rate that even if there's inflation going on, the counter deflationary effect of technology will be so much that the inflation will actually be expiring. And that's the whole game.
I think it comes down to change. We want to deny it for a couple of reasons. One, it is more complex, right? We already are busy. We have a complex life, and now you want to throw something at me that's not going to just require a small change in my thought process and my operations, but you're talking about massive change. And so I think just naturally it's like a defense mechanism.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us for Signals and Symptoms podcast. We're out of the two besties, we have Edward Marx here, who is, again, as usual, amazing. So we were talking about the big ideas, and the idea is that it's going to be form of a lecture, but the idea is that we are actually going through this. The great acceleration, AI infrastructure, AI consumer operating system, which is really what the things are going to be, AI productivity, and the whole thesis of the AI side is the central dynamo. The central dynamo is basically spinning everything, accelerating 5 major innovations at the same time. And that is the core thing. And that's exactly what I mean. I literally had my whole C-suite meeting 10 minutes ago. And I just told everyone that, hey, this is the new era. We need to actually do this. 5 major innovation platforms, AI, public blockchain, robotics, energy storage, and multi-omics are becoming increasingly interdependent as performance advances in one platform. Convergence should lead to major increase in demand. And that is so core. So let me explain this to you. So we were not using LLM for X amount of reasons. But in general, from the last 2 years, this cost curve of LLM tokens have so decreased that now company-wide, the option is that either you use AI or you get fired. And the reason is that I am spending $100 to $200 per month subscription of 5 of them is actually equivalent to one person's salary, actually 1/5 of one person's salary. So the question really is for me as a CEO is, hey, why not? Like, why the hell are you not using it? And if you're not using it, then you don't know how to use a new tool. And if you're not you know how to use a new tool, you're not a learning person. If you're not a learning person, then is there really a space for you in my company? I know this is a little brutal, and then Ed and Harvey can straighten me out and you can give your opinions. But what are your thoughts? Do you feel the same when you're talking about to people? Harvey, you go first before your flight goes up. And then Ed, you can talk about this when you're in live health. And what do you think when talking to different CEOs, CTOs, board members? What's the overall, energy and how things are moving?
I'll jump in real quick. So I believe strongly in Marx's law. And Marx's law, basically, I've mentioned it before, think of it as technology is exponential. You and I are all logarithmic, and our organizations are logarithmic. The bigger the gap between technology and us, the bigger the disruption. I.e., if, say, in this example, Dr. Junaid is saying, hey, he's not going to hire X person if they're not using AI, that means they're lower in the curve. And as a result, he's trying to stay as close as possible so he is not disrupted. So with that principle, I want to encourage everybody out there to really come to these types of podcasts, learn it, understand it, so that you are above the curve of others, that you get that job, you be able to be that disruptor. Ed, what do you think?
Completely agree. But I think everyone knows I do these networking events every night at all major healthcare conferences called Ed Marks the Spot. And it goes pretty late. Thankfully, I don't drink, and so it's no problem in the morning. But then I lead charity runs every morning at this event, and I think that's a recurring theme. If I think about recurring themes from our podcast since the beginning, you have to lead. Leadership is influence, and the only way to get influence in the age of AI is to be an agent of AI. So, absolutely agree.
We are agents and double agents. Of AI, because Harvey actually has a AI twin too. The world is entering an unprecedented technology investment cycle. And that's actually, for them, of course, is because they're coming from an investment thesis. That is something that we have talked about before. But people will say that, right? And that, hey, this is the dot-com bubble. This is the 1991 Enron energy, cycle. And that's exactly how winners are chose. You invest in multiple diversified, and then one of those investments is going to go 300x in the next 20 years. So what you're talking about is that the innovation cycle is going to contract significantly, and investment cycle is going to go more rapid and more disruptive and more volatile, in my opinion, as compared to dot-com bubble. Do I again? Please feel free to disagree with me, Ed or Harvey, but I think that we are looking at a new, much faster contracted cycle with much more volatility. Do you agree, disagree, or any thoughts?
Just say real quick, Ed, if you think about it, you look, I'm zooming into this thing, and you look at AI data center space, and then you look at software, AI software. And if you think about it, what did SpaceX just do? They added XAI. And so if you think about it, I mean, that's kind of either coincidental, or Elon Musk is looking at something like this and saying, wait, I combine these two, my curve will be bigger.
Junaid, there's still a good segment of the population that doesn't believe this is happening. So I had this conversation with some super intelligent people, and I highly respect, and I try to be as open as possible, but they're like, oh, this is like blockchain, or this is like the cloud, it'll pass by and there'll be some change, but nothing dramatic. And I'm like, no, don't you see all these markers? That's the difference. It's not just hype, and it's actually happening. You see it happening. So this is definitely a change, and that's why one of the reasons we do signal and symptoms is like encourage people to lay hold of this and lay hold of it with authority and confidence, and move and be part of the solution, like Harvey was talking about earlier with that curve.
So right. So disruptive technologies can catalyze growth in multiple ways. And that is an example that we need to know. Automobile replacement cycle, increase 8x revenue. And the way that they have structured this is, again, catalyze growth in multiple ways. And that is something that is going to be what he exactly gave you the example. When you have one tangent like SpaceX, and they have another tangent like, internet, now you're really saying, well, why don't we do space data centers? And that's exactly what you are looking at. And this is, again, a massive opportunity. And also, I'm just going to be honest with you, the risk profile for investors have increased because you really need to find the right companies to put the money in, and the right founders and the right team. Each disruptor could generate profound macroeconomic results. And then, again, we're not going to get political over here, but the core thesis of this whole administration is, by the way, that technology is moving at a breath rate that even if there's inflation going on, the counter deflationary effect of technology will be so much that the inflation will actually be expiring. And that's the whole game. Still, you're saying that again, the food is getting cheaper because of AI causing vertical farming. Again, it doesn't apply everywhere. There's going to be spikes where it's going to be great. Everything is now coming from the AI basis as we go along. Interesting technologies like quantum computing are unlikely to disrupt for the next 20 to 40 years. And that's actually, to be honest with you, I'm going to tell you that this is ARK's biased. So that's very important to understand. ARK is very betting heavy on Bitcoin, and they're the biggest, actually, to be honest with you, all the hype and everything and the volatility aside, the biggest threat to Bitcoin is quantum computing. And then they are downplaying this because they don't want to upplay the quantum computing. I don't think so. It's 20 years. I think we are one major breakthrough away. But the question really is that, are we going to use quantum computing right away? I mean, nefariously, yes, like, breaking, high level encryption for, military or Bitcoin and everything. Other than in the real life with the B100s and this, Harvey's phantom space is going to push into space data centers. We are very close to what we want to achieve in terms of energy consumption and AI compute without even requiring quantum. And there are very few use cases in quantum that is really needed, again, except for, honestly, I feel like it's just nefarious use of this. Grow to dominate global market. Disruptive technologies could grow to dominate global markets. And this is, again, I'm not so sure, dominate global markets. What do you mean by that? So what does global market means? Global market basically means energy market, significant amount of trade between countries, which includes spices to clothes to everything. Will that? I doubt it. What they are pointing towards is that is China is going to be basically making AI available for the rest of the world, and they're already doing it. And I don't think so that's going to disrupt on top of everything. I think that's a little hyperbole in my opinion, but I just want to make sure that you guys understand. Again, this is not a. They may probably doing much more research than I do, but I just want to make sure that these are my opinion. But here's the main thing: programmable biology, and we are already seeing this. Unfortunately, regulated with customized proteomics, customized proteins, all of this going through med spas and everything into the technology, and we're going to see a lot of it coming into this. So we are going to go through this again. This is a little later, but the technology is getting so much cheaper. We have the cost of curve of what we saw for sequencing is going down, but now biosimilars, biologics are getting much more common. And again, we are all impressed or whatever. It's not impressed, by the way. We have real life situation. But and this is odd, right? Like I saw that the earnings, first of all, the baseline earnings was pretty good, which is really odd that they were pushing to $1 trillion companies where the PE ratios was insane. Then they of course did the capex, and now the valuations are resetting. So what's going on? I mean, I know we are not talking about an investment perspective, but what is this disconnect?
Yeah, it's a really good question. If we bring it back to healthcare, why are these super smart individuals, right? Healthcare requires quite a bit of education. We're talking about clinicians and others who are running multi-billion-dollar enterprises. So it's not for a lack of capability to understand complex situations, complex environments. And I think it comes down to change. It's like we want to deny it because the implications. We want to deny it for a couple of reasons. One, it is more complex, right? We already are busy. We have a complex life, and now you want to throw something at me that's not going to just require a small change in my thought process and my operations, but you're talking about massive change. And so I think just naturally it's like a defense mechanism. Like, no, it's not going to happen that way. It's going to be much slower. It's not going to be that much impact. And I think it's comforting. So I look at it from a humanistic point of view. I think it's just comforting to say, no, it's not going to be that radical. It's not going to. So I think that's part of it is just is change and change management in our own cultures and our cultures within ourselves. So I know that's probably not it's definitely not a technical answer, but I think that's really what's going on in people's minds. It's just so overwhelming. They're shutting down.
And I have to admit, it was very overwhelming, and it is very hard because human learning is at a very different pace, which is again, you're basically creating AIs at a PhD level. AI agents could facilitate more than 8 trillion in online consumption in 2030. Insane numbers like we look at. Again, very small portion of the overall market, just being honest. But this is representing a significant chunk, and this is going to really adversely impact advertising revenue and who controls it. And again, this is becoming a little bit more scarier from a consumer perspective because it was very different when it was deterministic search, right? Search for a car with 4 wheels, whatever. Then I want to search this, and are there at the back end, the advertisers are going to be basically going to be very honest upfront that this is an ad, or is this something I paid to get my results better, which is again the game we used to play, search engine optimization and everything. But again, it is taking a new form as we move forward. Anything to add, Ed, over here as a consumer of healthcare? Maybe this is going to change the way you consume healthcare because of all of this?
Yeah, of course. It's going to radically change. I even spoke to people, I'm not going to mention because of their thesis, I'm not going to mention which organizations these thoughts came from, but let me just say leading academic organizations. Some of the individuals running them will tell you it's going to completely change, right? The primary care will be gone as we know it, those sort of things. And they are actively inside of their organizations trying to alert everyone. But as one person said, it's a it's another moment, and I wasn't around, but I can only imagine what the discussion was like at Kodak, right? When everything was changing with film. It's like, well, we're Kodak. Nothing's going to change. We're Kodak. And so there's these large organizations, prestigious, and that's what they're thinking. And it's kind of scary that people in organizations aren't really grabbing on it. But yeah, it's definitely coming.
We're going to end on this slide today. And this is really what to continue with Ed's theme here, that exactly the cost of intelligence is collapsing. There was one thing in which we could say that, there are some use cases that were actually, dominant, like creating a blog or AI slop everywhere with videos and everything. What's really happening, and what is truly transformative, is essentially that you are getting a PhD level person that you do not have to train, is going to read all the context and get ready, onboarded in 2 hours, as compared to, even if I have a human, I have an unlimited budget, I have massive humans, just to onboard them and to be able to do that context and get ready. That is changing. Edward, any more thoughts before we close for today? Anything new that I should know, our audiences should know?
So if I talk about the biggest gains so far, so these are from actual, providers, some on the payer side, but ambient listening, that's been the biggest thing, right? And again, people, it's been pretty disruptive, but it kind of went slow. So they're sort of used to this kind of slow roll. So the ambient listening, the messaging for in baskets and things like that, the automation, leveraging AI to respond to patient queries and stuff, that's been very good. And then for research and reporting, so some are laying hold of that. And obviously you talked at length about this. Cost reductions, like how can I eliminate costs? And to your point, Junaid, you could just ask chat, like, how do I do this? You could dump your financials from your health system. Maybe you don't need all these analysts. I'll never forget, I walked in. I don't think people understand how manual everything is. I'll never forget the scene, and I don't want to name my organization just because I don't want any negative shade on my organization, because every organization is like this. But it was just overwhelming, because I wanted to visit the finance department, right? I was trying to visit all my colleagues and get an understanding of operations to see how IT could work with them and leverage technology to make them more efficient. And I was given this address, and I thought I pulled into like a Costco, and I opened the door, and in it was like 2,000 people all sitting in cubes in a giant warehouse. And they were manually, of course, there was some automation. This wasn't very long ago. But the amount of manual effort, and now today you can leverage AI, and that warehouse I don't think they've done it yet, but I'm sure it's going to be here. So cost reduction, so some people are doing, but ambient listening is kind of like the easy entry point for everyone. And it's good, right? It's very helpful. So what are the challenges? And one was staff and patient education. So educating staff, and Junaid, you've been saying, hey, you're telling your own team, either you leverage AI or you're out, because this is the future. You don't want to be stuck in the past. Data standards normalization. Regulations is a big killer, especially in healthcare. It's along with nuclear energy, it's the most regulated industries, and we keep regulating I think we over-regulate ourselves, and hurts us. While we have to be careful in this, right? We haven't talked about this much, but if we over-regulate, which we do, we're going to get completely disintermediated. And then human in the loop, always try to make sure somehow, some way there's a human in the loop. That'll be interesting as things evolve.
And then this user experience that you just told me about, human in loop. And that's very interesting that we have been teaching our teams, designers, etc., to have an amazing user experience that decreases the overall review time, because that's another problem, right? I mean, if I'm going to have to, as a clinician, have to review the whole node, then it just defeats the purpose. But the idea is that how we can create a user experience which has both decreased human interaction, but quality human in loop interaction. And we are working very hard on it. We actually showed you in the last recording. We're going to post that soon as well.